Well, welcome everybody. I want to welcome you to our Young Minds Family Mental Health Seminar. My name is Alyssa Myers. I am a licensed professional counselor in the area and also a member of this amazing church family here at Covenant Methodist Church and the worship leader here on staff. We are so excited about today. We have some amazing speakers for you guys. It's going to be such a treat. A few orders of business. When you came in, you should have received a note card. There are also pins in the seat backs in front of you. If you don't have a pin, you can just raise your hand and we'll have somebody pass those out to you. Or if you need a note card or an extra one, you can do that as well. On these note cards at the top, there is Wi-Fi information, as well as a phone number that you can text in your questions. At the end of today's session, we're gonna have a Q&A, and so I would encourage you throughout today's session, if a question pops up, go ahead and text that number, and at the end, I'll hop up and ask some of those questions for our speakers to answer for us. If you do need a stretch break or a bathroom break at any point, you're welcome to get up at your leisure. I think we will have a bathroom break once in between as well. Or if you need coffee, we went ahead and set up the coffee in the back, or there's water, of course, in the commons. It's on here. There's a password right there that says Guest at Covenant. All right, at this time, I want to pass it over to Pastor Jason Burnham, who's going to offer up a prayer for this morning.
Well, I want to, first of all, welcome you. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to host this. One of the beautiful things about the gospel is when Jesus encounters people all throughout his teaching and his journey, he's about healing. But he's not just about physical healing. He's also about spiritual healing and relational healing and mental healing. And I think that when you see all of the nuanced ways Jesus encounters for healing, it teaches us that holistic work is the work of the church. And that holistic work is the work that we share in today. So I'm thrilled to be able to host this seminar today, and I'm so excited to welcome you all here. We do believe in coffee at Covenant. I am sorry that the coffee was not prepared. What happened is the fuse tripped overnight, and so it was heating up. It is now actually dripping, and so we set it up in the back of the room, and as soon as it's available, I'm sure one of the presenters can say, hey, coffee's in the back. So let's bow together for a word of prayer. Gracious and loving God, what a gift it is to be able to gather together to learn more about how you have created us, how you have blessed us with nuances and with beauty, and how we can bless our families through understanding more and more. Lord, we thank you for the children of our community and the children of our families. We ask, Lord, for their health and healing, that you would be a balm that allows them to interact in the world with their fullest self, as you've created us each to be and as you've created us to be in relationship with one another. Lord, thank you for those that come to present today. We ask that you would guide them and that you would guide our thinking and our conversing, that it would be glorifying to you. We pray this together in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jason. So we're going to hop straight into our session for this morning. We have two amazing speakers from Joyful Hearts Play Therapy and Counseling Center in the Woodlands. Will you help me in welcoming Amy Drury and Kirby Luna?
Good morning. How is everybody today? Good. We kind of want to take a quick survey before we introduce ourselves, and we want to know the ages of your kiddos. So how many of you have ages 4 and under at your house? Okay. How about ages 5 to 8? All right. And then 9 to 12? All right, any over the age of 12? Okay. All right, great. That just kind of gives us an idea.
Yeah, little babies.
Some
Little babies, okay.
All right, and you can do stuff with little babies too. So, yes. Okay. All right, awesome. So my name is Amy Drury. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm a registered play therapist. I'm a fully EMDR trained therapist, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And I'm also a certified grief counseling specialist, and I've been trained to utilize EMDR in the playroom. So I have a passion for helping kiddos and their families and figuring out how we can best help them navigate life and help you as parents figure out how to help them best navigate life, and also to help you best navigate parenting. It can be hard and scary. So I have a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old. So my husband and I are empty nesters, which has been a really fun and interesting time in our lives. But it's, we kind of created this new us. So that's been really fun. And in 2018, I decided that I wanted to start Joyful Hearts Play Therapy and Counseling Center. And God has been with me through all of it and laid the path out every step of the way. God's hand has been in my journey. And Kirby is going to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about herself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kirby Luna. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapy associate. I've been training and working towards my registered play therapy license. So I've been training in that for 3 years. I got my master's degree from SAM as well. So I have training in play therapy. I love working with kiddos and families with autism, ADHD, anxiety. I have training in ART, which is accelerated resolution therapy, which is a different way to target. It's a trauma-informed approach, so target trauma, anxiety, depression, things like that, in a more nonverbal way, which is just a different cool modality. Also coffee, I'm getting the signal that coffee is ready, so if you need that this morning, that's okay. I've already had like 2 or 3 cups, so yeah, definitely get that. What else about me? I've been at Joyful Hearts for like 2 years now. I think the biggest thing of our approach is God led us to this profession. We have a lot of experience with kids. I don't have my own kids. I went to school and nannied through school. I love to love on other people's kids. I have 2 dogs, and that's it. And my husband and I just have our dogs right now. But we've been led to this profession, and we've learned a lot of stuff. And we like to sit down with people and say, this is what I've learned. How can we love on you? How can we help you? So that's what we're going to try to do here today. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So I'm going to go through our agenda. We don't have...
Oh, I can click. I forgot about that.
So we're going to touch on basic brain development. I'm not going to test you over anything, so don't worry about that. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence and how to help your kids identify feelings. And sometimes we as adults need help identifying our own feelings. We're going to talk about self-control and self-regulation and how you can help your kiddos co-regulate. We're going to talk about some different types of discipline or alternatives to discipline, family connectedness, anxiety reduction, and then self-care. So we're also going to watch a video a little bit later, and I hope that you will find something today that's helpful to you. So let's start with the basic brain development. We're going to focus on 4 parts of the brain. Oh, I should also tell you that we have a QR code out by the front doors, and the slides and then some other handouts are available. You'll just click the QR code and you can download those from our website. So we're going to talk about the brainstem, the diencephalon, the limbic system, and the cortex. So who knows about the brainstem? So that's the bottom part of the brain. That's the first part that develops. It develops from the bottom up, and it can be referred to as the downstairs brain. It is the most animalistic part of the brain, so it looks very similar to like a lizard brain. That's how God designed us, so we have some similar parts to other animals. And so that's part of the reason why when you have a little child who is having a meltdown and maybe they're acting like a wild animal, it's because that part of their brain is engaged. So the brainstem is the first to develop as the child grows, and it mediates the core regulatory functions like body temperature, heart rate, respiration, blood pressure.
Yeah. I think the biggest part is like you're not really aware or in control of when this is engaged. So your body's doing that all by itself because your body's good at doing a lot of things by itself. So all of these are just kind of automatic. The big thing about this,
Yeah,
automatically happening.
All right, and then we've got the Diencephalon, which is the next part up, and that is the part that handles fine motor control and coordination. This is also the arousal part of the brain that controls the fight, flight, or freeze part of the brain. It controls appetite, and if you feel full, and it controls sleep. And then also there are emotional responses that sit in the diencephalon of fear, hatred, love, joy, any other kind of feelings that you can think about.
So when you experience something traumatic, which can be perceived or real danger, you feel like you're in danger, you think you're in danger. This could be hurricanes, somebody you love, something traumatic happened to them, car accident, something like that. The fight, flight, and freeze, that's what's targeted. So that's what's activated, this part of the brain. And this is what you're primarily, this and your brainstem, because if your brainstem's not working, like you're not alive. So we go from now we're alive to the next layer is when something traumatic is going on or perceived danger. This is where we're functioning right now.
All right. Then we've got the limbic system. So the limbic system, it's more complex. It handles attachment, controls sexual behavior, controls emotional reactivity, and it stores memory. So if you think about a traumatic experience, what happens is in our brains, those memories are stored. So sometimes there's good stuff, good memories, and sometimes there's bad memories. All that is stored in the limbic system. So if we're working with a client who has some early childhood trauma and we want to use EMDR or ART, then the limbic system is part of what we're targeting in that work.
So when you smell like apple pie or like, oh, my grandma or my mom used to make this, and you can like envision it and all that stuff, that's all the good memories that are there. Also, if something scary or traumatic, a dog came after you or something like that, that's also where those memories are stored. So.
And then we've got the cortex, which this is the more intricate part of the brain. It's the crowning achievement of brain architecture. This is where the frontal lobe is, the frontal cortex, and then this is constantly developing. And so we now know that the frontal lobe that controls executive functioning isn't fully developed until age 26. And so if you've got kids and you're saying, just make a good decision, it shouldn't be that hard, they just can't.
It's not there yet. It's not developed. I would say anybody that raised your hand and you were like, I have a kid that's under 5. This is really starting to develop around 3. And that's where you see starting to regulate all those things, starting to plan things out. Like you can probably see in that 3 to 4-year-old range a big difference from the 2 and under. And you can see a big difference at a lot of ages. But a lot of these executive functioning skills, which are planning, emotional regulation. So that's the 3-nager, the tantrum, all this kind of stuff. They're working it out because their brains are starting to develop this at that age. So it's a little bit of behind the scenes of why can't you, or just calm down, or all these things that can be so dysregulating to us. This is what their brain is doing. So it's a little nugget to keep in your head of your brain is still trying to figure this out and still trying to grow. Plug for ADHD, this is where the prefrontal cortex, executive functioning, people who have ADHD, that part is understimulated. So a lot of kiddos, we see, I'll throw plugs for ADHD in this whole time, and we can answer questions about it later, but we see that it's 30% behind their current age. So you have a 10-year-old, they can do a lot of things that another 10-year-old can do. Their executive functioning skills are 30% behind that. So it's going to be more of like a 7-year-old. And a lot of times it's practicing those skills. So that's also a lot of changing expectations, which we'll get more into later. I think I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but this is like, this is the part of the brain where a lot of stuff is going on in a lot of these neurodevelopmental disorders. Do we keep going?
With neural activity? Do you want to talk about neural activity?
Yes. So your brain works. I guess I give the most basic stuff, and Amy will come in with some like really smart stuff if I miss it. But all this stuff is firing in your brain. So that's how your brain works is something fires and sends a signal to different parts of your body to raise hormone levels and all these kinds of things. So when we see anything happen at any given time, things are firing in your brain. Stuff's firing right now because I'm talking to you. Stuff's firing in your brain because you're looking at me and listening to me and seeing all this stuff. When we practice things, when we're learning things, when we practice things over and over, when our kids practice things over and over, like the patience we want from them, or the hands to yourself, or not yelling at your sibling, or emotional regulation, their brain fires because they're learning new things, and it strengthens when you practice it over and over again. So the more that we can, in a calm way, practice what we want kids to do, the more their brain is strengthening it, just like working out with weights. Your muscles get stronger. Their brain pathways, their neural pathways are getting stronger. So that's a big thing to remember, is doing it once isn't as strong. So working out once doesn't make me as strong as working out consistently or working out 10 weeks in a row.
So we like to say neurons that fire together wire together. So that means whenever we're doing all of these things and we're practicing things, the neurons in our brains they connect with each other, and then they'll help us remember how to do those things over and over and over again. Who's heard of neuroplasticity? Oh, okay, yeah. So a few of you have. Okay, so neuroplasticity is the reorganization of neural pathways in the brain that occur when we learn new things or memorize new information. So if you think about if you had a piece of clay and you took a coin and you mashed the coin into the clay and you made an imprint, you're going to remember what that looks like, and it's going to be there kind of solidified in your brain that, okay, this is what it is. And so it's the same thing with neuroplasticity. As we're learning new things and we do them again and again, our brain grows. And so it's a beautiful thing. It can also be called plasticity. So it's the ability of the brain to modify its connections or rewire itself. And it occurs during normal brain development and throughout life. So not just when our kids are little, but you have neuroplasticity. You're going to learn things today, and so your brain's going to keep growing.
Yeah. So you can teach an old dog new tricks. We can all learn new things. I will say all the infants, the young kids, I want to say it's 6 or 7, that your brain has the capacity for all of these different things. So I would say your capabilities for neuroplasticity, for your brain to grow and learn new things, decrease as you get older, but it's still there. You can still learn stuff.
So we've been joking around about mirror neurons this week, and we've been saying mirror neurons, and so if we say it funny, that's why. So a mirror neuron, I said it, look at that. It's a brain cell that reacts both when a particular action is performed and when it's only observed. So this would be like smiling. So as we smile, other people might want to smile back at us, and so that is a mirror neuron, or many mirror neurons. So mirror neurons allow us to see and recognize different facial expressions and allow us to have empathy, and then lots of other things.
Yeah, this is like with your babies, all of you that have babies, when you're smiling at them and cooing at them and all that kind of stuff. And the importance of engaging that first is all of these neurons in their brain and all these things are going to try to mimic that for you. And they're starting to learn, even at that young age, what happiness feels like, what being comfortable and safe feels like. This also leads into modeling. So when we talk about younger kiddos or older children, their brains are following what you're doing. So if your facial expressions, your body language, all the things that their brain's picking up that you're doing, their body wants to match that, is the basic point of that.
All right, so if you have any questions about brain development, you can text those to that number and we can touch back on those later. And now we're going to move on to emotional intelligence and feeling identification. Okay, so who knows all about their feelings all the time? Yeah, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. And think about, as we as adults, we can get overwhelmed by our feelings, but our kids a lot of times don't even know what these feelings are inside. They might know that they feel yucky, but they have no idea, other than that, what that means. So feelings like frustrated, they might not know how that feels. And so if we start to help our children by identifying feelings for them and for ourselves, we can help them have emotional intelligence. And that's going to help them not only at home with you, but as they develop relationships with friends, and then later on in life when they develop relationships with maybe a loved one, this is all going to help them. So this is a great basis and foundation, as being able to name and identify feelings. So not only all of those things I just said, but also when we can identify feelings that our child has, we can help them feel validated and understood. And so if you were having maybe a really awful day, and maybe you've just had it up to here with stress, and so you're thinking, oh my gosh, one more thing, I don't want to do one more thing, and somebody says to you, hey, you seem pretty stressed out. Are you doing okay? How would that make you feel? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Good thing, right? So what if you are really angry and you start yelling and someone says, calm down? Does that help?
I know. All these guys are like, it does not work for me. It doesn't work for my husband. I was like, just
Yeah.
calm down.
It's the same thing with our kids. As much as we would like them to calm down, it doesn't ever help when our kids are kind of having a meltdown or a fit or a whining or a tantrum, and you say, calm down, stop crying. So keep that in mind. So a lot of times if you have a kiddo and they are really upset, just acknowledging that feeling that they have will go a really long way. And it can turn a meltdown off just like that. It's really great. So the other thing is your tone of voice and your level of excitement should match your child's when you're naming a feeling. It's okay if they're yelling and screaming to say, you're so mad. And it just kind of can stop them in their tracks sometimes. So that's something we never think of, right? Maybe we're yelling our own things at them, but instead if we'll acknowledge their feeling, it can go a really long way. And this helps children learn to identify their own feelings.
And that leads into, so when I say emotional regulation, that leads into helping children calm themselves down. So it's like every time I'm upset that somebody took my toy, or I'm upset that you won't let me eat Cheetos for breakfast, like I can handle that by myself, and you don't have to console your child every time. That also is kind of age appropriate. So we talked about earlier, brain's not fully formed to be able to handle this, but it also helps with anxiety. When we talk about emotional regulation, it's anytime we get dysregulated. So that's anxious, worried, super excited is dysregulated because we're not this kind of here and ready and calm tone. And there's appropriate times to feel those ways, but we want, my goal, I guess, I'm guessing for you, is that you want your kids to be able to bring themselves back down by themselves. And we want, as adults, to, in a healthy way, bring ourselves back down. So this is the first step in helping them learn what's going on in their bodies so that they can do that.
So how do you name feelings? For some people, it can seem awkward, and you might think, oh, we didn't talk about feelings. When I was little, my parents were like, shove it down. You're not allowed to have those feelings. Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. So what in the world do we say? And what if you're wrong? Your child is going to tell you if you're wrong. If you say, oh, you seem really sad, and they're not sad, and maybe they're mad instead, they're going to say, I'm not sad. So they'll let you know right away that you're wrong.
And that'll be great because it'll give them the opportunity to clarify. So then even if you just try, and you don't have to be like, you are dysregulated, and all these different big old feelings, like you can stay with the mad, sad, glad, happy, scared, like we can stay on that level for them, especially the younger kids. Older kids I'd challenge to get a little bit more specific and learning what the difference is between frustrated and hurt and all these different things, but they'll clarify for you, which opens the dialogue. It's saying, I see that there is something going on with you, and I want to know more about that. So that's the biggest thing that they're getting when you just start asking them or seeing how they feel.
All right, so we're gonna look for nonverbal cues like body language, facial expression, actions. We're gonna listen for verbal cues. So you might hear crying or whining or sighing, maybe yelling or screaming or grunting, and noises associated with destruction. So if you have a really mad kid, you might hear banging or tearing up of things, which we hope that's not the case. So you want to determine what feelings you think are present in the child, and you want to look for the nonverbals, and then you want to say to your child, you are mad. And then again, if they're not mad, they're going to tell you. And sometimes that just kind of stops them in their track because they really never thought that you noticed they were mad, and maybe sometimes they're doing it just for attention. So you're giving them that attention by telling them what they're feeling. And you can also say, oh, you seem really sad about that. Now, I also like to tell the parents I work with that we don't want to just name feelings for our kids. We want to get really good at naming feelings for ourselves. So this seems a little bit silly, I know, but if you can start in your household saying, I'm really happy right now, or I'm so excited about whatever it is. You also can say, I'm mad, or I'm feeling really sad today. And it's okay to have all of those feelings, and we want to model for our kids that all feelings are okay. Even if you don't like those feelings, it's good to let the kids know that it's okay to have those feelings. Mm-hmm. We don't want to teach them to stuff things down.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions like that. Is it okay? Work's hard, or life is hard right now, and life's confusing. So, is it okay to say, my job is really hard right now, or this is hard? And so I think it's appropriate, in an age-appropriate way. So consider your child, consider how old they are, and what language you need to use. It's not, oh my gosh, I hate my boss, I'm having such a hard time with my boss. They don't need to hear all that stuff. That's for your partner, your friend, your sibling, somebody else to take on. But it's okay to let them know that you are not okay all the time. And that, hey, I've had a hard day, and I'm going to swing on the swing set to relax, or the front porch, or I'm going to sit here, and could you help me by cuddling with me? Could you help me by doing this? It's okay for them to know that you have feelings where you need to recharge, or that you're sad that something happened too. And it's letting them know that that's okay to feel that way, and showing them how to ask for help, how to tell people around them that they feel this way, and what to do. A healthy way to kind of let that out. Plug for when we're looking at nonverbal cues, feelings are also in your body. So if you've ever, I don't know how many of you guys are massage therapists, chiropractors, anybody that works with the body, physical therapists, but if you've ever gone to chiropractor or something, and maybe they're cracking your back, and you might just get a rush of oh my gosh, I just got sad, or kind of stressed or something like that. That's releasing a lot of emotions, because a lot of it's in your body. So when you're naming feelings, you're helping kiddos also stop and scan their bodies and go, okay, my heart's pounding a little bit, I have these thoughts in my head, oh, I'm worried. This is what worried feels like. And so we're connecting all of those things, the thoughts, our body feelings, and all of it together, and teaching them the whole package of what it feels like.
Yeah, and you can also ask the kids, where in your body do you feel that? So you might ask, where in your body do you feel happy? And they might tell you, my tummy, it feels like it's, there are butterflies in there. Or if you say, oh, you seem really anxious, where in your body do you feel that? And they might say, it feels tight up here. And so that's another way that we can help our kids be emotionally intelligent. Mm-hmm. So now we're going to play a game called Name That Feeling.
Are we going to do it in pairs, or are we going to do it as a group?
What do you think? Let's pair up. Find a partner.
If you feel comfortable.
You don't have to. And here you can decide what you want to do.
Yes.
So we're going to give you little scenarios, and then you can talk about it with your group member, and then we want to know what that feeling is. So Charlie gets off the school bus, and his shoulders are sagging. He's looking down at his feet, and he's walking very slow. How is Charlie feeling? Who thinks Charlie
Yeah.
is excited? Anybody think Charlie's feeling excited? No. What do you think Charlie's feeling? Sad or disappointed?
Yeah.
Good.
And so there, you see your kids walking in and maybe it's just, you look sad, you look disappointed. You want to talk about it. And some kids need some time to process it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we want to hear what's going on, I want to fix it, I want to help you, I want to do all this stuff. But sometimes we need to take a step back and figure out how do we help them, but how do we let them process it? Do they need 10 minutes of sitting by themselves or petting the dog before we kind of unpack? How do we handle that situation? What happened at school? Is there anything we can really do about it?
And kids aren't going to say, hey, I want to talk about my feelings with you. They're going to say, will you play with me? And then that answer should always be yes. What do you want to play? All right. Mary is playing outside with her friend from across the street, and you hear screaming. You look out the window and notice Mary's face is red. Her fists are clenched. She is inches away from her friend's face. Her nose is scrunched up. How is Mary feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah, does everybody agree Mary's angry or mad?
Yeah.
She might even be infuriated.
Yeah.
So this is one of those moments where as parents, sometimes we want to teach our kids, okay, this is a great opportunity to tell Mary how to not be this way, but don't do that. Acknowledge Mary's feelings, say, oh, you're so mad. Maybe you want to call Mary in before it gets really heated, right?
Yeah, before Mary hits the neighbor
before Mary
kid.
hits or scratches or pinches the neighbor kid. But instead of saying to Mary, we don't act like that, instead what you should say to Mary is, it seems like you were really mad. I wonder what was going on. What happened that made you so mad? And then after that, you could talk with Mary about different ways of handling things. But we don't want to try to teach a child to swim while they're drowning. We want to acknowledge that feeling and then let them kind of sit with that, understand that feeling, and then later on we can go back and use that as a teaching example.
I think this is also a plug for brain stuff that we talked about earlier. The more elevated or the really big feelings of being so mad that you're going to hit somebody that kids can feel, or being so upset that it's meltdown mode and like on the floor sobbing, the world is ending, that's when fight, and freeze can also come back out, where, and it might not hit that point completely, but it's also not rational thinking. So sometimes we need to calm back down. We need to take some time, use a calm tone, and we need to kind of work things out. So that is a great teaching moment. We can help Mary hang out with the neighbor kids better, help with some social skills, all these good things. And Mary's brain is not functioning at its most capable point. So sometimes we need to help her get back down before we lead into a lot of teaching, a lot of words, a lot of different stuff like that.
All right. Jane is watching her mom rock her new baby brother, and she cautiously approaches her mom and says, will you play with me? She has tears in her eyes. How is Jane feeling? Jealous, right? Mm-hmm. Good job. Y'all are pros at this.
Yeah.
Okay, Sam jumps in the car after school and is smiling from ear to ear. He quickly tells you that he got a star on his spelling test. He tells you that only 3 people got stars on their spelling test today. How is Sam feeling? Proud, right. Excited, happy, proud. Okay, Shelby runs to greet you when you pick her up from preschool. She's smiling and laughing, and she gives you a giant hug. How is Shelby feeling? Happy, right. Good job. All right. So sometimes children have big emotional expression, and it can feel very extreme. And this can happen a lot of times when you're in the middle of Target, or you're at the mall, or you're somewhere where you might run into people you know, and it can feel like doom and gloom to you. So if this happens to you, there are some steps you can take. One is acknowledging your own feelings. You can say them out loud if you want to, or just to yourself, like I'm feeling embarrassed and overwhelmed. And then we want to acknowledge the child's feelings in a calm voice. So you might say, you're really mad, or you're really frustrated. And then we want to try and understand the child's feelings from their perspective. Think about why they might be acting this way. Are they tired? Are they hungry? Is it 5 o'clock in the afternoon and you're at Target? Many of you know what happens around 5 o'clock in the evening with your kids, right? You're trying to cook dinner or do whatever, and they're having a meltdown because they're tired and they're hungry. And so 5 o'clock is never a good time to take your kids to Target. So you also can allow the child the space they need. So if you are in the middle of the store and they start having a meltdown and they lie down on the floor, I would stand over them, kind of straddle them, and just stand there and let them do whatever they need to do to go through that meltdown. I understand that those are going to invoke some really, really big, strong feelings for you, but if you can remain calm and just let your child have the space they need, everybody's going to be happier at the end of it. You might be embarrassed and you might want to leave immediately after that, and that's okay. But it's more important to really focus on your child's mental wellness and their needs rather than what people think of you. It's nobody else's business how you're parenting. God gave you your child to be the parent of. You are the perfect parent for your child, and it's hard, and we don't get told that enough. Parenting is hard, but it's also really rewarding and fulfilling, and you get to learn some different ways to help your child be more successful.
Are you just standing there, being with them?
You are.
Like on your phone? Are you looking at
You're not on your phone. You're definitely there, present with them. I don't know if y'all heard the question. Are you just standing there, or you're on your phone? What are you doing? So you're just in the present moment, watching it happen, maybe wishing you were somewhere else, praying if you need to pray, God, help me, give me grace, give me mercy. But you're just letting them finish their tantrum. And you're also you're not like saying, calm down, it's okay, stop crying. You're just standing there letting them be. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds terrifying.
It's not going to say anything.
I'm sorry?
What should we say?
You can say you're really upset.
Yeah,
You're
this is
so
hard.
sad. This is hard. You're tired. You're hungry. You're angry. You don't know why we're here. Anything like that.
Do you need a hug? So I would say taking a minute to act calm, even if you don't feel calm on the inside. Trying to calm down your voice. Maybe it's all they need is for you to get down on their level with them and be like, hey, this is really hard right now. And then you kind of wait a little bit, like, I wonder if we should. And I think that comes into knowing your kiddo. If you know, like, they do this when they're hungry and this is the time they're hungry, we should go get a snack. It's not always buying the toy, like, okay, if you stop this right now, you get the Barbie camper. Or like they escalate up, like you get that. Like that, it sometimes works. And there's, honestly, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Sometimes it's helping them feel understood and helping them go through. Remember that deep breathing we practiced?
That was not advice to buy the Barbie camper.
Don't buy the Barbie camper. Can we breathe right now? And helping them walk through the process because their brain isn't developed enough to go, what do I need right now? I need to go get a sip of water and calm down. It's calmly leading them through those things that you've practiced when they are in a calm state, like deep breathing, or let's get a sip of water, let's get a snack, let's do this. So it's calmly saying, like, it's okay what you're feeling right now, and working towards doing something else. It might not flip like a switch. Is there another question?
So my child gets hysterical to where, like, if I'm calmly speaking to her, she doesn't hear me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't even hear myself. Like, I'm talking to her.
That's because that animalistic part of the brain has kicked in, and it doesn't matter what you do or say, nothing is going to get through right then.
So then, do we just kind of keep talking calmly as in, like, she's not, I don't know, like, not necessarily matching her emotions?
Yeah, you don't,
Raising my voice in the middle of
right,
like, you look so angry,
right. Yeah, so if they're in the middle of the tantrum and they can't even hear you because they're so loud, I wouldn't say, you're so mad right now. So maybe scratch that from earlier, right? We do want to try to help them be regulated. And so the best way you can do that when they're dysregulated, that's a dysregulation, is you want to regulate yourself. Don't get out your phone and start videoing them. That's not a good idea.
Or saying, Dad's going to be so mad when he sees
Right.
this, or Grandma and Grandpa are going to be so sad.
Right. We just want to meet the child where they are, okay? And so when you're a parent and you have this and you think other parents are judging you, they've all also been through this or they will go through this. So this isn't something that's unique to just your child, even though it may feel like it. Trust that you know what you're doing. And that's a hard one, I think, especially in the middle of a severe meltdown in the middle of somewhere. It's hard to feel like, hey, I've got this. I know what I'm doing. I can do this all day long. I mean, it feels like, oh my gosh, I just want to go home and crawl under the covers and be done for the day. But you can do this. You can do hard things. You have kids. So figuring out what they need and just letting them be and let them get finished with that, and then you can move on from there.
Yeah. Part of it is meltdowns are going to happen. Meltdowns in the middle of target are going to happen. Part of it's reflecting on what causes that. Are they expecting to get a toy every time? Are we going at the wrong time of the day? Yeah. I mean, is this really happening? Are they hungry? So it's kind of reflecting afterwards, but that's something, maybe after they've gone to bed and we're looking at, okay, this is happening every time. Then we want to see what's going on that we can change a little bit. I've also, when I've had kids, so I don't have my own kids. I can go to Target without a meltdown. But in the playroom, when I've had kids that are melted down, I sit on the floor with them. And sometimes I'm just sitting there and I breathe really loudly. And then those mirror neurons, I'm calm, their body's going to want to start trying to get back to their calm space. So I breathe with them. Sometimes I rock back and forth. So then I'm doing this kind of gradually. Then I might say, like, this is really hard. Then I'm tapping. When we tap like this or our legs, that stimulates both sides of your brain. That also is sending all this stuff across your body, and it's also very calming. So I might tap like this. So there's not a magic word or magic formula or spray or something to help get your kids from stop melting down and get up off the floor and get it together. I think it's figuring out those things. Sometimes it's singing a song. Sometimes it's playing a calming song or something, depending on what is that. Sometimes it's like, bro, eat this snack out of my purse and like it'll be okay. Like eat these goldfish and like we'll finish up. So I would say it kind of depends on what the triggering event is and doing all of those little things to help calm down. And you might feel kind of silly singing like Jesus loves me or Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in the middle of Target. But I mean, everybody's already looking at you because your kid's on the floor screaming. So you might as well kind of move it along a little bit and get down there with them and help them get out of that mindset.
And then another point is it may not be that they're hungry or it may not be that they're tired. It may be that there's some kind of sensory processing dysregulation going on. So it may be that the overhead lights are too bright or all of the noise is overstimulating and your child may just be overstimulated.
Or some of their clothes. So that's where, and I know you have a question, but that's where I'm going, looking at if it's always this certain place, are they anxious around something? Is it a sensory? That's where I guess it's hard to give a broad general, this is what you do when your kid's melting down. But I know, I'm going to get his question first and I'll go.
I was going to say physical separation. A lot of times our child is in that animal mode.
Uh-huh.
And he's just hit his sister or he's wanting to get to something that we do So we have to physically restrain him, and talking to him does not work. Calmly saying words. So physical restraint, what do you recommend for physically separating him from the situation they're in?
Because he wants. So that sounds like impulse. Impulse, like it's impulse control. Like he's not really thinking about it. He's like, I'm just gonna go and hit, and then I'm gonna feel bad later when my sister's crying. Maybe I won't feel bad. A big part of dealing with impulsivity is setting up the environment for success. So with the best of your abilities. So it's knowing, maybe it's having the rule, like if they touch everything in H-E-B or grab everything off the shelf, it's like you have to stay in the basket and you keep that basket in the middle of the lane and everybody else goes around you because you're just trying to get through H-E-B. Or you have to hold my hand. Or the car seats are so far apart that they can't touch each other. So a big thing is helping them set up for success. And then I always talk about, especially with ADHD, because there is an impulse control component to it, with helping be their external thinking pattern, their external voice. So it's helping that over and over again and practicing not being impulsive, practicing those things over and over again. So it's like, okay, and trying to catch it before. I see you're about to hit, let's stop. Tell him what to do with his hands. Put your hands, sit on your hands or hold your hands. Okay, let's stop. And getting him to stop and thinking it out, that's gonna be kind of a long-term and a lot of effort on you guys. To be honest, is setting his environment up for success and then helping him walk through, because his brain probably isn't there yet, where if it's impulsive, he's not really thinking it out. So it's helping him stop and then walk it through. I wish I had an easier answer for that.
Going back to your question about is physical restraint okay? So I would say yes, as long as it's in a gentle way and you're not like exhausted at the end of it. I know it's exhausting though, so like there's that. But if you can remove, like if he's hitting sister, but it might be easier for you and sister to leave the room and leave him there by himself. And maybe that's something that happens every time he starts to hit sister, is you snatch her up and off you go. And then that removes the problem. And then also saying as you're picking her up, like people are not for hitting as you walk away. And then not engaging any further in that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a question?
Our daughter is 7-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes maybe we have an argument or she was just very impulsive or whatever, that she's like in that level that she doesn't want to listen, but she's so mad. She just sometimes wanted to run to her room and snap the door. And so how to manage that? Because sometimes I don't know if just following her and don't let her do that, or give her space until she's calm, or sometimes I try a hug and sometimes work before, but sometimes it's like this like adolescent way to act, like it's like, should I allow that? Because I don't know. So what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah.
So let's repeat the question back so that everybody can hear it. So she said that her daughter is 7, and then sometimes when she gets really upset, she'll like run up to her room or leave in the middle of it. And so she'll slam the door. And so your question then is, what do I do with that?
I would say to point out she's leaving. So I'm wondering if she's starting to get that fight, flight, freeze mode and brain. So to me, that's saying she's trying to go. She's learned, okay, I go to my room to calm down.
That's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. As long as she's safe in her room, it's okay to do it.
She's yelling and crying.
And she's yelling and crying. Yes, and it's all the big emotional, and you're like, all I said was like, it's raining and we can go swimming tomorrow. And like, yeah, and it's like screaming, crying, and you're like, I can't control the weather. Like, so there is a lot of that. Some of the phrase, and I think it's using some of the tools and walking through those big feelings with them kind of helps it from getting so big. But it'll stay big for a while, and hopefully like they'll get upset, but they'll learn to verbalize. So that's part of when we name their feelings, They're learning what this feels like so then they can verbally communicate to you, I am really disappointed, or, I'm upset about this, or you hurt my feelings, or something like that. So having that verbal communication kind of in that talk about that understanding, then it doesn't escalate as much. So that's a big thing. It's also okay, and this was part of our limit setting that we'll talk about later, to say, it's okay for you to be disappointed or sad. It's not okay for you to slam your door. It's okay to go to your room and to hug your teddy bear and calm down, or pet the dog, or I like dogs. Everything's about me is like, I go pet my dogs, I guess, to calm down. But, it's okay, or to draw, or Play-Doh, or twisting pipe cleaners, like those are good things to calm down. And it's okay to say I need space, but it's walking through, like slamming your door, especially as kids get older, like it's not good for your house, it's loud, it's like dysregulating to everybody else. So it's okay to say, you can choose to do these things, Play-Doh, whatever, bubbles, whatever helps them calm down, or if she likes to color. I try to stay away from screens, but most kids are going to say that they feel really good when they're watching YouTube. But that's really distancing them from it, where if they're manipulating something in their hands, they're more present. So giving her the option of like, you can go to your room, you need to shut the door quietly. In the moment, she's not going to remember that, but I think it's talking about it afterwards in a calm way that's not, you're not bad.
There for a while.
How long is she there?
I mean,
It just depends.
10, 20 minutes, it depends if
Uh-huh.
I don't come back. So I always try to go and just
Yeah.
calm down. And it normally works, like, to go and say, give me a hug, what's going on, or whatever.
Yeah, so it's like you do a great job of talking, giving her space, and then talking it out
But I
afterwards.
don't wait more than 2 minutes, to be honest.
And
Yeah.
that's okay.
But I think that if I don't go, she just keep feeling that
And she wants
way.
some attention as well, right? When she does it, she knows that gets attention.
She might, and that's the thing
So
with
that part of the
behaviors.
question was, does she know she's going to get attention? And that's part of it. Is it attention-seeking behavior, right? And it may be.
Yeah.
And it may not be.
Yeah. So part of me is like, we should always validate feelings, and then part of it is that feeling loneliness or rejection, and you're the safest person to me because you're my parents, and I need a hug from you. And then to me, that's validating their feeling and redirecting the behavior that we don't want to see. So you're feeling lonely or rejected, and maybe all those you thought you had a little bit before teenage brain, but now it's a little bit sooner. But those are a lot of things too. I feel like we're not connected or something. So then it's going, hey, and we don't have to have this meltdown every time you feel like I hurt your feelings or you feel rejected. Let's have us sitting at our special spot on the couch where we can sit and talk, or some kind of special way, or verbally that she can tell you that she needs that connection without the intense cycle going on and on again. Because if you feel like she needs that from you, so she might need direction and help calming down, but she might, if she's feeling disconnected or lonely, she might need that, and that's the only way she kind of knows how to get it.
So maybe you come up with a code word. Like the code word is marshmallow. And so if you come to me and say marshmallow, I know that means that you need to sit with me. I need to rub your head or your back. We need to be tightly squeezed together so that you feel that safe comfort and you feel like you're together. So sometimes the code word is a good thing.
Yeah.
Also, if you can recognize, like if this is happening often, do you recognize what that looks like before she has this meltdown? If you can figure out the pattern for that, then you can cut her off, right? Mm-hmm. And anticipate when that's going to happen and maybe take care of it before it happens.
Mm-hmm. You have a question in the back?
You guys may get to this, but
Okay.
as we're talking about this, like the proper and positive ways to respond to our children, I know I am recognizing all the ways that I have not done this. Obviously, it's right here, like learning these. So I know, now that I learn these things, I can implement them. But what do we do about like the damage or whatever, like the things that we taught our kids that, and maybe y'all are addressing that with our kids now. I don't know, but like, how do we
They'll all be fixed when they come out of this 3-hour session.
So the question is, we've made messes. How do we fix what we've done? And the truth is, you're not necessarily going to fix what you've done. You have to give yourself grace. And then moving forward, we're going to do it this way. Not looking back on what we've done. We've all messed up. Before I did play therapy, I messed up so much with my own kids. And I can stand up and tell you stuff. But I can also tell you that when doors got slammed, we may have taken them off the hinges at my house a couple of times. I mean, there are things I'm not proud of. I screamed at my kids. I don't anymore, and they're grown, so it would be really weird. And so we get this great knowledge of skill set when we go through graduate school and learn all of this stuff. There's no way you can possibly know. And kids do not come with a training manual, as you know. So you're doing the best you can do. You have to forgive yourself and just be okay with what's happened. You can apologize if something comes up for you. You can say, you know, I handled it this way before and I'm really sorry because I don't think that was the best way to do it. But it's okay. And kids aren't going to remember all of that. You haven't scarred them for life, I promise. We may think we have, but we really haven't. What they're going to remember for the most part is how they feel when they're with you, how you make them feel, not all of the things before. They're going to remember what, like the here and now, what's going on now.
Yeah.
All right.
That leads into our slide about grace. That was a great
that
segue.
slide. So all children do have bad days, no matter what. You could be like the most magnificent parent in the world, doing everything right, but guess what? Everybody's going to have bad days. You look at Adam and Eve in the garden, right? And so God allowed them to make their own choices, but God is the parent. You know, here's Adam and Eve making bad choices. God didn't do that for them. They did it for themselves. So if we think about God that way, and who are we compared to God, right? But yeah, our kids are going to mess up, but we have to be able to give ourselves grace. And then get off of social media. Don't really, if you want to, you should. But you think about everybody posts the most perfect things on Instagram and Facebook and whatever other platform you're on. But nobody, well, a lot of people don't post the truth, right? So you may see this mom who's taken her little girl to the swimming pool and they have matching bathing suits and, you know, it's this beautiful, all these pictures, the little girl's hair is fixed perfectly, but you may not know they never got in the water because the mom was just taking pictures and on her phone the whole time, and then they go home, and then here's the next person who's been on the floor with her kids all day. She's got Cheerios in her hair, yogurt in the chair, whatever it is, and she feels like garbage because she's comparing herself to this perfect mom who that little girl's probably thinking, if my mom would just give me some attention, it would be great. And so don't compare yourself. You never know what you're comparing yourself to. It may look like something that it's really not. So give yourself a lot of grace. Overreacting or shaming a child because of behavior that's indicative of their age is harmful to the child. So we don't want to say, you wet your pants, you're such a baby. I'm going to put a diaper back on you. That's not really helpful. If people think that you're doing a bad job, that's okay. They can think whatever they want. You know that you're not, or maybe you feel like you are, but you're not. You wouldn't be here, right? So at the end of the day, what matters the most is your child's mental wellness and that you love them. And love covers a multitude of other stuff. Do you want to do the next one? Oh.
This is different. All right. It's kind of, is it like that? Oh yeah, there we go. Thank you.
We're new at this.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we kind of touched on this. There's a lot of information. So we're taking like, here's what we learned in school and our experience and all these kind of things. In reality, we're all imperfect people, and we can reflect on things that have happened and try to do better. I'm going to just add in a plug. I don't know what the slide says, but surrounding yourself with people that are positive, that are like-minded, that like-minded enough that they understand your parenting goals and that they can help you and love on you, but strong enough to help you through something, strong enough to show you where, hey, this is a you problem. Your kid's 3, they're fine. This is a you need to let go of it problem. Or, this is a we'll get through it together problem or something like that. So,
Or if this is, oh my gosh, this is so big, I'm not sure what to do, call a friend, call an older parent that you know. Reach out to a play therapist.
yeah, or call us.
Call us, we can help. Okay, self-control and self-regulation. So we touched a little bit on like dysregulation and self-regulation. So we want our kids to be able to calm themselves down and self-soothe. So basically that's self-regulation, to figure out what it is that they need to do to be okay with themselves. Self-regulation is the ability to remain calm, cope with big emotions, adapt and respond appropriately to our environment. And then self-awareness is how we get to that self-regulation. If we don't have self-awareness, if we don't know what those feelings are, what we're feeling inside, then we're not going to be able to regulate.
And so a lot of it is learning these skills or practicing these things while you're calm. So I would say getting some kind of feeling chart with faces for little kids especially, and sometimes it's just going through, what does it feel like when you're sad? What can we do about that? So it's having conversations, and it doesn't have to be a big study session, but having conversations and giving the tools while they're calm. And then, okay, now we're a little bit dysregulated, but we're still thinking enough so that they have those tools, because then again, their brain, every time they practice it, every time we practice it, our brain's going to strengthen that. And so when we are super heightened, super dysregulated, then our brain and our body's going to know what to do before we have to rationally sit down and think about it. So depending on, I would say, what the struggle is for your kid, whether it's getting very sad, getting mad, something like that, deep breathe. Then there's specific things that you can practice from that. I would say deep breathing is a big thing, body awareness, and knowing, how do I get safe? So whether it's any kind of big feeling, what can you do in the environment, and how do we get safe, and walking through that and kind of stair-step situations, so then when it is a big meltdown, they already have that practice into place.
So we're going to do some starfish breathing. So here's your starfish. Put your hand up. Okay. So with your other hand, you're going to trace your fingers, and this is your starfish. You're going to trace the tentacles, and you're going to go up and breathe in. And when you go down, you're going to breathe out. And up in, and down out. Up in, down out. Up in, down out. Up in, down out. You don't want to do it super fast, right? You want to do it at about that speed. And then if we're still dysregulated, we can go back the other side. So this is a great one. Your children can do it on their hand, under their desk at school, if they're embarrassed. And that is just a good breathing technique. So we have some other ones in the handouts you can access on our website. Your kids also, if they're elementary age, they are learning some deep breathing today. So they're learning a rainbow breath and a rocket ship breathing. So those are some deep breathing techniques that they're going to learn today, and you can teach them how to do the starfish breathing.
Getting moving is a big thing with, I say, kids who have ADHD. Exercise, regular exercise, is a great way to help keep your body regulated. A lot of hormones and everything are released whenever you exercise. So this can be fun things like trampoline, bike riding. They don't have to do like P90X isn't a thing. It used to be a thing, like a workout video, or something like that. But maybe it's something like we work out as a family. So it's also teaching them, like, when you're feeling yucky, jumping on the trampoline is a coping skill. Riding your bike is a coping skill. So it's finding a way to also move their body. Because if we sit here and feel sad and think about how sad we feel, we're spiraling down. But if we can say, you're feeling angry, or is it they're jittery or anxious or whatever it is, sometimes that's a Play-Doh, and they have access to the Play-Doh, or for something that's a little more calm down, kinetic sand, things like that. But sometimes, if your kid's more active, sometimes it's the trampoline, or running the stairs, or a dance party, YouTube yoga. So there is deep breathing, but there's a lot of things of trying to get, okay, they're feeling this way. So that's, again, really understanding how they're feeling and what can I do creatively to get them to move into a different mindset that's more calm. And a lot of times that is moving their body, moving their hands, engaging all of your kind of senses. Be creative with the senses and how we're going to change the environment, anything we can do to change the mood.
You can pick your favorite 2 yoga poses and do those. Okay, let's do some yoga poses together. Yelling and raised voices can dysregulate, so try to stay away from, I just fear we'd skip that one.
Okay.
But if you want to hit it, we can.
No, I was just matching it.
So just because you're yelling doesn't mean your child's going to listen. In fact, usually it kind of has the opposite effect. It can be scary. Do you like it if someone yells at you? If you don't, you should stop yelling at your kids. Is it ever okay to yell? Yeah, stop! Don't run into the street, right? Stop. Or other times it's probably okay, just not to where that's a normal form of communication in your household. So what can we do instead? We can pay attention to emotions and feelings behind the dysregulation. So again, if you can pinpoint what's going on before the child becomes dysregulated, then you're ahead of the game and you can kind of cut them off at the pass. Yes?
Do you have any recommendations for our youngest kid? She likes to take her time. And you're like, she's fine. Can you please do this? And after the 5th time, I just really blame myself and start screaming. And then she starts moving, right? But then there is screaming, there is crying, and you just make a mess, right? Mm-hmm. How do I proactively prime her so she moves along on her own?
Okay. So the question is, the 5-year-old is kind of on her own timeline, moves at her own pace. It's really frustrating. By the 5th time, Dad has said, hurry up, we need to go. He's frustrated and maybe yelling, right? So I had this with my daughter, and I used to say, hurry, pretend there's a bear chasing us. Not one of my finest moments, y'all. Hurry, run to the car, a bear's gonna get us. It didn't work. And she's still kind of on her own timeline and goes at her own pace, and it works for her. So really, it's figuring out what you can do to help speed things along. So if part of the problem is that it's taking forever to pick out the outfit in the morning before school, then it is making a list, and the night before you pick out the outfit. Maybe you put shoes and socks in the car, so she's putting them on in the car. Anything that you can do to help the process along, to help yourself not feel overwhelmed. But kids are on their own schedule, so maybe it's getting up 20 minutes earlier so that there's more time to allow for that. Mm-hmm.
I think part of we're going to touch in the alternative discipline will be phrasing for that. And it's also, and I don't know if it's just, okay, she's just slow and kind of she's just in her own world and it's really happy there and that's awesome. Or if it's the yelling voice says, I'm serious. So we have some phrasing a little bit later that kind of shows getting serious. Our tone of voice doesn't show we're getting serious. Our actions are going to show that we're getting serious. So we can be cool as a cucumber this whole time. And it's really, I would say, they heard you. She heard you the first time probably, if not the second time. So the other 3 things are probably not necessary. I would say the exception with that is auditory processing disorder and ADHD, and I'm sure some other things. Kiddos really don't hear you, so sometimes it's like a gentle tap or look at my eyes because they might not really hear you. So that's kind of if you think she probably does hear you, yeah, if she's distracted, then she probably doesn't hear you. Then she's like, why are you yelling at me? I just heard you. Or is it, okay, now I'm getting serious, and how do we say I'm getting serious without losing our minds?
I feel like I have their kids.
I would say, like, you don't hit me, you know, she also hits, which I, like, punch in the face hits for this tiny little thing to fall. And so I would say things like, you can't hit me. And apparently I was giving her the choice, and she decided she could. So she would say things like, Mommy's not for hitting. And that worked for about 6 months, and now it doesn't work anymore. So, like, when you get to a point where you need different tools, like, how do you advance this so that we don't get back to the behavior? Because I feel myself now yelling again. Like, 'cause I'm frustrated that we've reverted back to this behavior that doesn't work for anybody in our house.
And that's the framework. So that's the framework we're going to get to in a little bit. The and to that is mommy's not for hitting, and you can show me you're angry by saying it with your words, or if you're okay with her hitting the pillow, you can pretend this bear is mommy and like go at it. Like, so it's it's something like that. And it's also, I'm not for hitting, and if you choose to hit me, then you're choosing to go to your room. You're choosing to sit here and be separated from mommy. So it's continuing with the choices and continuing to show her that she's choosing the outcome of the situation.
Mommy can scream at me all the time. And I'm dumbfounded by, like, she doesn't get the cause and effect. And I get it, her brain is developing.
Yeah.
For me, it's very difficult to get back down to that level when I'm being screamed at for an hour or I'm being hit, you know. And so I put her in her room, she's screaming. Eventually I have to shut the door. Now she's banging on the door. It's just, I'm at a loss with this child, honestly.
I have some questions. I know he's laughing, but I have some questions that are more specific, like what is she trying to get out of it? Like, is she trying to get time with you? And it's showing in this way. So there are some more questions that might be more specific, and we might talk later.
A little bit later. Just don't leave without visiting.
Yeah.
Okay, we can talk. There was a question over here.
Oh, I have a question. I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. And sometimes my 9-year-old will start acting like mommy to the 4-year-old and give her even more upset and crying. It's usually over like toys. The little one easily cries over everything. And I'll be like, Lyndon, you're not the mom, I'm the mom. What do you do?
With that. So the scenario is there's an older kiddo and a younger kiddo. An older kiddo likes to be a parent and parent the younger kiddo. And she's not nice about it either. Yeah, it's like, I'm in charge.
She's a grumpy parent.
A lot of the times, I think it's clarifying roles. I think a lot of big siblings, especially kind of when they're still kids, like are really proud, like I'm the big sibling. There's a lot of stuff they get to do that the younger one doesn't. Like it's very much focused. When the younger one's born, it's all about the baby because babies have a lot of needs and all those things. And then it moves into, well, you get to do these things. There's stuff you get because you're older and you get to do because you're older. A lot of times it's having the conversation and clarifying their role in the family. Like mommy and daddy are up here and this is mommy and daddy's job is to keep you safe and to make the rules and to do these things. Your job can be to teach as a big sibling. Your job can be to help as a big sibling, to guide as a big sibling, but your job as a big sibling isn't to enforce the rules. And in all of our families, some of us have probably felt different roles, like I had to take care of my younger siblings, or I had to do this or that. And it's really giving them the freedom to like, you don't have to be the parent and set the rules and be a little police officer, like you're breaking the rules or you're doing this wrong with the toy. So it's helping that mindset change of, they're doing this wrong or they're breaking this rule, and helping them clarify, like, my role as a big sibling can be to help, but that's not helping. That's rule following. Yeah, that's helping is, this is how you tie your shoes, or this, your counting is great. Let's help you count or learn letters. Not, like they did something they weren't supposed to do. So helping them understand they don't have to watch the little one all the time. It's not their job.
There was another question.
Say another question.
I didn't know if you were looking past
actually you right here in the front.
Yeah.
Cool. As far as the brain goes, I talked about it earlier, and I think a lot of the things were around like fight, flight, trauma, and all that. And the question is traumatic experience more imprintable on memory, or the positive experiences more?
So that's a really great question. I think that both can be equally imprintable, and I don't think, the question was, is a trauma more imprintable on the brain than positive experience? And so I think that
I would say, look, I don't have a research answer for you. I can kind of see like, well, this is what I'm seeing. A lot of times we remember a lot of the negative stuff. I think it also depends on your previous experiences. I think if you've had a couple traumatic experiences or maybe one, then your brain's gonna look different than somebody who has had a lifetime of trauma and hasn't been safe and abuse and things like that. So I'd also say it depends on your past experiences and depends on your brain, because every time you experience something traumatic, your brain changes, and that there is a lasting imprint from that. There is also healing from that, and that's similar to like, if we've messed up or something like that, like we heal in relationships all the time with your partner, with your siblings, like we're imperfect people relating with each other, so there's gonna be conflict there. But when there's trauma, it definitely imprints on your brain and it affects your whole body.
But children
And
are
it's
also
lasting.
resilient, so they can come back from that kind of stuff too.
And kind of following up on that one then, and y'all might get into this in a sec, just I'll wait till later. It's talking about trauma. Is it okay to bring it up, and then how to bring it up in a way that you can possibly move past?
Like a death of a parent.
So
Okay.
the next part of that question was, is it okay to bring up trauma and talk about it? Is it okay to talk about trauma and kind of process through that? And I think that the answer is yes, that kids need to process that stuff, but it may not be processed through talking. It may be through playing. It may be that you have puppets together and you're talking about this incident together, but using the puppet so it takes the pressure off of the child, so they're free to say things. And you could wonder things instead of asking direct questions, like, I wonder if you think about that time when blah, 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 right? And that kind of opens that communication up too.
Mm-hmm. Or reading books.
Yeah.
Reading books, kind of giving them the space. So I think it's kind of repeatedly giving them opportunities to talk about how they feel about a trauma or something like that. And I would also say it might depend what it is, but especially like loss of a loved one or somebody, it's giving them the opportunity, but not pushing too hard where it's like, you have to tell me because I'm ready to talk about it now. We have to talk about it now. It's giving them the option to say, I'm not ready right now, but I'm gonna continue to give you the opportunity when they are ready.
And also, we tend to think about how kids go through things from our lens, and it's not necessarily always the same, right? We're going to process things differently. If I had a twin sister and we shared the experience of our mom dying, we're both going to have a different experience of that. And so I can't put my feelings on my twin sister, if that makes sense. So just because there's a horrific event and we think, oh my gosh, that's horrible, and it is horrible, but the child may not see it that way. It might not be as intense as what you think it is, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And we can talk more later if you have specific questions.
So, I think you mentioned that you do EMDR. Do we do EMDR on children for trauma or just adults?
I do ART, and Amy does, which can be used on kiddos, but Amy does EMDR in the playroom.
Can you spell out the acronym?
Accelerated resolution therapy.
And then EMDR is eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing.
Can you talk a little bit about both of those techniques?
Sure, we could do that.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
If you wouldn't mind, if we can save that till the end for Q&A.
okay, let's come back
that would be
to that
awesome.
at Q&A.
We'll save that, and
will
you can
make
text
a
in your
note of that
question.
one? Thank
Okay.
you. All right.
Good.
Yes, because we tend to get sidetracked over here. Yes, sir.
I feel like it's always punishment place. Every time I do something wrong, go to your room. Like, room supposed to be a place of comfort. Why it's always the punishment? Go to your room.
Do you want to take that one?
I think it depends on the situation and it depends on the kiddo. Sometimes it's like, it's also and it depends where the language we use and how we're using discipline. So sometimes it's like, instead of being like, go to your room, it's, we need to take a break. I'm going to take a break in my room. You take a break in your room, and we're going to talk about it in 10 minutes, or I'm going to come get you, or you're going to come get me when we're ready to handle it. So I would say a lot of it depends on kind of the context, because we do want kids to feel safe in their room, and I want to feel safe in my room. So that's
90% of us is like, she did something wrong, he did something wrong. You know what? You're punished. Go to your room.
yeah. I'd want to ask your kids, how do you feel about that? I mean, that's my question is how do they feel about it? Yeah.
That would be like a timeout.
That is like a timeout. So we'll kind of touch on some alternatives to that, and then we'll see where we are. And if you have more questions afterwards, then you can text them to Alyssa. Yes, ma'am, in the back in the blue shirt.
So we have a calming station that she uses, but not. So she wants to get my attention and she's having a center. But what I started doing is I started saying, you know what, I need my time to regulate myself when I go outside. Because at first I was saying I need the time to regulate myself when I come to Kirby and I can take a deep breath and that. But now I go outside and when I come back, I feel like she thinks that I abandoned her. Do you think that's still right, or maybe I should go into my room? I need a time to regulate myself and stay in the house. I just walk out like literally to the door, to the porch, and then come back in. Do you think that's the right approach, or something different that I should do?
So the question is, when she puts her child in timeout or in her room, or when you just need time because you're dysregulated, you walk outside and mom is wondering if the child feels abandoned. I think as long as you may say something like, I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling sad or angry, or whatever your word is, I need to take a break and I'm going to walk outside and be in nature to take a break. I'm on the front porch if you need me. Then that says, I'm not abandoning you. Here I am. This is just what I'm doing. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing all these tips and framing and so forth. It's very much focused on our children or the children that are at home, right? What have you seen work well in terms of those outside of the home, whether it's friends or cousins or extended family?
So the question is, what works well for those children outside of our homes? How do we focus on those kids? And it's really hard to do. You can model those behaviors for friends and relatives, but it's really hard to just say, hey, this is what you need to do. You could give them the handouts from today and say, hey, here's some ideas. If you have any questions, I can talk about it with you. Even with like my great nephews who are 5 and 8, I have to be very careful. And it's really hard. It's really hard in my profession to have family members who don't do things the way you would maybe like them to do things. This is recorded too. That's so great. Anyway, so there are behaviors that happen with friends and loved ones that, we would like to change, but maybe we don't have any control over that, which is really not the best answer on what you're looking for. But I think anytime you can model what you think would be appropriate is the best way to go about it. Just being a good role model.
Mm-hmm. A big thing, I think, to highlight on this slide is reinforcing the positive behavior. We always think, okay, there's something negative, you broke a rule, or we're melting down, or something that is, oh, you're doing this wrong. But sometimes it's like you shared with your sister today, or you did this the first time I asked you, or something that you're trying to turn around when they do it right. And sometimes it's looking really hard for like, you put your shoes on and you didn't lose them this morning. Like, good job. Like, it's finding those things and reinforcing the positive behaviors, what they are doing right. Because sometimes it can get focused on, you're always doing this wrong. And sometimes we want to tell them when they're doing things right.
Does that ever get old? Like, I mean, like, I love affirmations.
Uh-huh.
For the kids, like, you're always, like, if they really are moving, and you're constantly saying, I'm so proud of you, I'm so proud of you, like, does that really, like, it doesn't lose, it loses its effectiveness?
So it might. We want, the question is, does it lose its effectiveness if you're constantly giving praise? So here's what I will tell you. Don't give empty praise. And then we want our praise, we want our kids to have an internal locus of control, which means that they get their self-worth from within instead of from outside. And especially as they get older and they're in relationships, we don't want anyone else to dictate for our kids how they should do things or how they should be feeling. So something you can say instead is like, I noticed that you're not screaming all the time, and you should be so proud of yourself. So that's still giving praise, but it's offering that internal locus of control. Or you know what? I know that was really hard for you, but you did it all by yourself. Like, that's praise, but see how that's different than like good job. So if we can remember when we're praising our kids to do more of that internal locus of control praise instead of just good job, you did great. You should be proud of yourself, or you did something that was hard, but look, you did it. You were determined to do it and you figured it out.
Yeah, and highlighting choices and all those things with it. Like, you chose to share with your sister, and now you're playing great together, and this feels great. So highlighting all that parts for them too. I think we're going to move past stuff pretty quick, but if you want to take a picture of this slide or a handout, sometimes just getting the body moving, changing environment, sensory stuff can be pretty calming too.
And all of these slides are available on our website. So the QR code is outside. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the slides are actually there. So if you want, you can download that later today. And then if you have questions, you can email one of us, and we're happy to answer them.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you to talk about children. God has given us the most important task that could possibly be given to anyone when He allows us to be. And along the way of being a parent, we experience sometimes great joy and great difficulty. And I'd like to share with you some things that I've learned in the process of being a parent that perhaps will make some of those difficult moments a little less bumpy for you. If we can just notice what children notice in their world, I think it will help us to understand why they tend to be less than perfect. They have an uncanny ability to get our attention. My wife and I, for about 14 years, have taught in the singles department in my church, and I have learned so much about single parenting from those individuals as they have shared their lives with us. Recently, a single mom was sharing with me an experience with her 7-year-old son, Bobby. She was walking down the hallway of her home one afternoon and walked past the bathroom. There's Bobby in the bathroom bandaging his finger. Blood's running down his hand. She rushed into the bathroom and said, "Bobby, honey, what happened?" He said, "I smashed my finger with the hammer." She said, "I didn't hear you crying." He said, "I didn't know you were home." They know when it's important to get our attention and how to get our attention. I have several rules of thumb that I want to share with you. And the first one is, the most important thing may not be what you do, but what you do after what you have done. Ponder that. I am not a perfect parent. Let me show you how that rule of thumb works. I came home one afternoon from work. It had been a terribly long day. A number of things had gone wrong. When I got home, my wife had headed up to here with our 5-year-old daughter, And in about 30 minutes, I had headed up to here with our 5-year-old daughter, too. And the next thing I knew, I was yelling at my 5-year-old daughter. I have never stood before a group of parents and said to them, now go home and yell at your children. It's good for them. I've never done that. But here I was doing that, violating something I believe in. And a few minutes later, the next thing I know, I not only am yelling at her, but I'm threatening her. If you don't stop that, I will. I've never suggested that parents do that sort of thing, and here I was doing it. I don't believe that that was the most important thing that happened in my interaction in our relationship that day. I think the most important thing that happened in my relationship with my daughter that day was what I did a couple of hours later when I'm sitting on the side of her bed tucking her in for the night. And I'm saying to her, Carla, this afternoon, when I yelled at you, I shouldn't have done that. I know better. But Carla, at that moment, I was so angry at you, I couldn't think of anything else to do, so I just yelled at you. And my 5-year-old daughter's lying there taking all of this in. When I finished, my 5-year-old daughter said, Daddy, you could have said, I'm mad at you, which is what I teach. And I had to be reminded of that by a 5-year-old. Now, look at that scene and think, what did my daughter learn that was important that day? I think she learned some really important lessons about a relationship. I think one lesson she learned is you can recover a relationship, because I had broken our relationship that afternoon. Therefore, I'm responsible for reconnecting with my daughter, for reestablishing that relationship. And I did that, or at least began the process of it. I think she also learned an important lesson about admitting that you've made a mistake. How else will our children learn these important things if they don't experience them from us? I think she learned it's okay to admit you made a mistake. But maybe the most important thing that she learned was that I loved her enough to admit those things. And I loved her enough to rebuild the relationship that I had broken. I can't always be present with my children to ensure that they will make the right decision. So let me share with you how to work on that. And this is my Oreo cookie theory. It came about when my oldest daughter was 3 years of age. We were visiting in my parents' home in Oklahoma. It was 9:30 at night. Out of the kitchen, into the front room where we were visiting, came my 3-year-old daughter. Now, I just told you something really important about me. It's 9:30 at night. She's 3 years old. A 3-year-old should not be allowed to be up at 9:30 at night. You see, folks, I'm just like the rest of you. I don't always do all the good things that I know how to do. I have learned to live with that rule of thumb that the most important thing may not be what I do, but what I do after what I have done. I make mistakes, just like you do. Well, here came my 3-year-old daughter out of the kitchen, clutching Oreo cookies to her tummy. One look at her, and it was quickly apparent to me, a 3-year-old should not be allowed to consume 37 Oreo cookies on her way to bed. And I'm just about to say to her, Kimberly, go put the cookies back, but no words came out of my mouth. Instead, there was this intervening thought, and the thought was, Gary, do you realize her entire life you have been telling her what to do? When will she ever learn what it feels like to make a choice? When will she ever learn what responsibility feels like if you keep telling her just exactly what to do? So I said to her, before I tell you what I said to her, there is a rule of thumb that goes with the Oreo cookie theory. rule of thumb is you give choices commensurate with the child's ability to respond responsibly. Don't write that down. Here's what that means. You give big choices to big kids. You give little choices to little kids. You don't give big choices to little children. Too much responsibility. This won't seem like much of a choice to you that I gave my 3-year-old daughter, but you must remember, it's the first choice I had ever given her in her entire life. It comes across the floor into the living room there, and I said to her, Kimberly, you may choose to keep one of the cookies to eat and put the rest back, or you may choose to put all the cookies back. Which do you choose to do? Stopped her dead in her tracks. She has a choice to process. And I knew she was processing the choice because I was watching her eyes. Have you ever watched toddlers? They think they can see in their minds. She's working choice over. And she went back out in the kitchen and she came out with one Oreo cookie in her hand. And my Oreo cookie theory was born right on the spot. And I've been perfecting it ever since. Now you could say, yes, Gary, but what if she had insisted on 2 Oreo cookies to eat? Folks, the beauty of choice giving is you fall back on the choice. I'm sorry, I know you'd like to have 2 cookies to eat, but that's not a part of the choice. The choices are, you may choose to keep 1 cookie to eat and rest back, or you may choose to put all the cookies back. Which do you choose? Folks, it doesn't work if there's not the word choose in there. Let me show you how this works in life. When that same daughter was now 9 years of age, she has a sister now, 6 years old. We're driving along in my automobile. There's this huge major battle going on in the back seat of my car. I think my daughters had agreed among themselves, never fight until you're riding in the back seat of the car when Dad is driving. Save all battles for that. My daughters are yelling, screaming, pulling hair in the back seat of my car. It's awful. I'm getting very angry. I'm gripping the steering wheel. It's not safe for me to drive like that. My first thought was, I'm going to pull over to the side of this road. I'm going to get out. I'm going to find the biggest fence post I can find. I'm going to drag it over here. I'm going to beat both of them half to death. They will never fight in the back seat of my car again. And then I had this intervening thought. I'm glad God gives me intervening thoughts, aren't you? And the thought was, yes, Gary, you could do that, but what will they have learned? And I quickly realized they will have learned, go as far as you want to go, be as out of control as you want to be. Dad will finally stop you when it gets to be too much. You don't have to control yourself. He will control you. And I thought, I don't want that for my daughters. So I pulled over to the side of the road. I turned the key off. That's a good sign we're going to be here a while. If it's important, we should take time for it. I turned and I said to my daughters, girls, we are about to institute a new and significant policy within the confines of this automobile. I got their attention. Just an aside, folks. Use big words to get your children's attention. Make them up. You don't have to know how to spell them. We were in the pizza place. We used to go to the pizza place a lot. I'll come back to my Oreo cookie theory. We used to go to the pizza place a lot when my children were younger because quite by accident we discovered some of our most important family discussions took place in the pizza place. At home we would finish eating and everybody scatters like quail. Got something to do, homework to do, or go across the street and play. But have you noticed when you go out to eat, nobody leaves until everybody leaves? You're there together. And these wonderful family discussions would emerge in the pizza place. I've also heard that in the pizza place there, at least the ones we frequented, there were these electronic mechanisms, games. It's kind of like the Las Vegas syndrome. You know, if you've got money in your pocket, you're supposed to put it in these machines. They're everywhere. And my son is into those electronic games. He was about 6 years old at the time. We're eating, and he's standing there wanting quarters to put in this electronic game. And I turned to him and I said, Craig, son, when we come to the pizza establishment, we want to partake of the food they provide, not to engage in the manipulation of mechanical mechanisms. I got his attention. He just sort of wandered off with this glaze on his face. That was one reaction. The other reaction was two guys in a booth next to me just cracked up. I know they thought that I was a nut, but that's okay. I got my son's attention. I have used that expression in the car in other places enough times that my children can quote it verbatim. Girls, we are about to institute a new and significant policy in this automobile, and the policy is when you choose to fight in the back seat of this car, you choose to give up TV for the day. My daughters were really into TV. It was important to them. Not that they watch 5 or 6 hours a day like many children do, but they did get to watch an hour a day. So that's why I'm using that. When you choose to fight in the back seat of this car, you choose to give up TV for that day. When you choose not to fight in the back of this car, you choose to get to watch TV that day. How many times did I use the word choose? 4 times. It's clear where the responsibility is being placed. When you choose. I went through that 3 times because I wanted to make sure they understood what the choices were. I started the car. I drove 5 blocks. The fight started again. Folks, I was almost proud of myself. With great calmness, I turned and said, girls, I see you've chosen to give up TV for the rest of the day. You would have thought I had dumped ice water on them. It just shut everything down. They were suddenly calm and quiet. Not only that, they were calm and quiet all the way home. And we were a long way from home. And when we drove into the garage, my girls said, what? Can we watch TV? Because we've been good all the way home. It's universal, folks. All children say those kinds of things. They don't have to be taught that. That they just know innately. Do we get to watch TV now? Because we've been good all the way home. To which I said, I know you'd like to watch your favorite TV program, but girls, the very moment you chose to fight in the back seat of this car, at that very moment, you chose to give up TV for today. Cry loudly. You would have thought the world was coming to an end. Would you believe, they did not watch TV, folks. Would you believe my daughters chose to give up TV 9 days in a row? Do you realize how I'm able to stand before you and say that? I don't have to say, would you believe I had to take TV away from my kids 9 days in a row? I didn't. I would have chosen for them to get to watch TV. They chose to give up TV 9 days in a row. And then a marvelous thing began to happen in the back seat of my automobile. A fight would start, one would start punching the other, or something, or look at them, or breathe on them. And the other would say, stop that, you're going to cause us to have to choose to give up TV today. They started correcting their own behavior. Isn't that what we want? It's called self-control and self-responsibility. That I won't always be there to control them. When my son was 4 years of age, I was down the hallway of my home one morning, and there are his pajamas in the middle of the bathroom floor. And I suddenly realized I've been seeing these things all over the house. He used to put them up. I think maybe he's read some book somewhere that says, leave your pajamas out everywhere. They're just out everywhere. I go in the next room, he's watching Mr. Rogers. I turned the TV off and I said to him, Craig, we are about to institute a new and significant policy within the context of this household. I got his attention. Folks, I have used that so much that when I say that, for my children, the world stops because they know something's about to be said that will affect my very life. And Craig, the policy is, when you choose to put your pajamas in the dresser drawer where they belong, you choose to get to watch Mr. Rogers that morning. Now notice that I've shifted from all day with my 8-year-old and my 6-year-old to that morning for my 4-year-old. That's all a 4-year-old can last, half a day. Whole day, that's eternity. So you'd never put anything off limits for a whole day for a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. When you choose to put your pajamas in the dresser drawer where they belong, you choose to get to watch Mr. Rogers that morning. When you choose not to put your pajamas in the dresser drawer where they belong, you choose not to get to watch Mr. Rogers that morning. The next morning, I'm walking down the same hallway. I go past his bedroom door. There are his pajamas right in the middle of his floor. I go in the next room. There he is watching Mr. Rogers. As I walked into the room, I didn't even get a chance to say anything. He suddenly realized why I'm there. He jumped up, ran past me, headed for his bedroom. And I'm going along behind him saying, Craig, Craig, son, I think I know what you have in mind. He's grabbing his pajamas and shoving them in the dresser drawer. You think that now that you put your pajamas away, then you choose to get to watch Mr. Rogers. But Craig, the very moment you left those pajamas in the middle of your floor, at that very moment, you chose not to watch Mr. Rogers. Cry loudly. You would have thought the world was shattering. But he did not watch Mr. Rogers because he had chosen not to. The very next morning, I am walking down that same hallway. There are his pajamas right there in the middle of the hall. Our hall goes like this. I'm going this way, and Craig's coming this way, and we meet looking at his pajamas.
Looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. Hang in there with us, guys.
My 3-year-old daughter out of the kitchen, clutching, don't write that down. So that's why I'm using that. When you choose to fight in the back seat of this car, and the other would say, stop that, you're going to cause us. My 9-year-old and my 6-year-old to that morning in the middle of the bathroom floor. And I suddenly realized I've been seeing these things all over the house. My automobile. A fight would start, one would start punching the other, or say something. Shifted from all day with my 9-year-old and my 6-year-old to that morning for my not to get to watch Mr. Rogers that morning. The next morning, I'm walking down that same hallway. I go past his bedroom door. There are his pajamas right in the middle of his floor. I go in the next room. There he is watching Mr. Rogers. As I choose to put your pajamas in the dresser drawer where they belong, you choose to get to watch Mr. Rogers that morning. Now notice that I've shifted from all day with my 9-year-old and my 6-year-old to that morning for my 4-year-old. That's all a 4-year-old can last, half a day. Whole day, that's eternity. So you'd never put anything on. Choose to put your pajamas in the dresser drawer where they belong. You choose to get to watch Mr. Rogers that morning. Now,
Amy and Kirby, I'm going to shift over to you. It looks like our DVD has paused and is not working. So if you guys can just give a quick summary of what was left in the video, and we will start shifting back to our lovely speakers for the day.
Well, I'm so sorry that y'all didn't get to hear how what happened with Craig, but basically Craig realized that he should have picked up his pajamas. And so Gary Landreth is like one of our play therapy gurus of all time. So we probably should have set that up before the video. But basically Craig learned his lesson. And so Craig was able, after that moment, when he had chosen, the very moment he chose not to pick up his pajamas and put them in the dresser drawer, he chose not to watch Mr. Rogers that morning. But the next day, Craig remembered to put up his pajamas. So the great thing about choice giving this way is it returns responsibility to the child. So like Gary Landreth said, you're not taking anything away from the child is choosing it for themselves. And kind of the point with this is we want, as our kids grow up, if they're across town at a party, we want them to know there are consequences for all of their actions, right? So by giving them choices and helping them to make good choices, they learn how to make choices for themselves. So this is also a great alternative to discipline. If you choose to have a tantrum at the dinner table, then you choose not to eat with the rest of the family. You can use it for a number of different things.
Or in Target.
Or
so
in
that's
Target.
again, where it's, I think earlier I saw a little confused faces like, am I just supposed to let them do this? So it's balancing, acknowledging their feelings and accepting it. But also if you choose to act a fool in Target, then you choose to leave Target immediately. And it's like basket done. And it's more inconvenient for you. You maybe need, if it's like medicine, you got to get your medicine. But other than that, then you can leave whatever that is and get it later, have your husband or wife pick it up later, just something to communicate. Like when we throw a tantrum, we don't just continue with the day, or we're not going to the park afterwards. Like you're choosing to just go back home.
Yeah, and so choices are powerful. I lost my train of thought.
I think this comes into kind of the framework we were talking about earlier, which we call it ACT, which is acknowledge the feeling, communicate the limit, and target alternatives. So that's where we really, was that? Oh, yeah, ACT. So
ACT.
I'm
If you
sure
think
I
of it
have
like
a slide
ACT,
for this.
I don't
actually.
know. Oh, there should be one.
Do you want to keep talking about it while I find it? There it is.
There it is. So it's basic limit setting. So you want to use this. This is how we set limits in the playroom. So it might look something like, Kirby, I know you really like to hit me, but I am not for hitting. Instead, you can choose to punch the punching bag, or you can choose to hit the egg carton. Or it may look like, Sarah, I know that you're really sad, but I am not for screaming at. You can choose to scream into your pillow, or you can choose to go outside and scream. And we want to give them two alternatives. I know what I was going to say about the choice giving. I'm going to back up for just a second. The beauty with choice giving is that the choices are choices you're okay with. So you're not going to just give them any choice that sounds willy-nilly great. It's going to be kind of like the Oreo cookies. You can choose to have one, or you can choose to have none. So your choices for your kids are always two choices you're okay with.
Yeah, we're not trying to go, oh, you're going to make the good decision. There's clearly a good one, and there's clearly one I don't want you to make. You're okay with both of them.
Yeah.
That's a big thing, too, yeah.
So I thought that was important. And then we'll skip back to the ACT, to limit setting. So we want to always acknowledge the feeling, communicate the limit, and target alternatives. And this is a non-shaming way to set limits and to have things you're okay with. So this can take, between the choice giving and then the alternative or the options, the limit setting, you can get rid of timeout a lot of times, or other punishments like going to your room. You can try these instead. It does work. You have to be consistent. And as you know, consistency is really the hardest part of parenting, is being consistent and following through. So you've just got to follow through, and then it's going to make a world of difference in your life. And then you don't have to take things away from your kids. They can make those choices for themselves.
And having anybody, grandparents, nannies, babysitters, neighbors, anybody that's around your kids frequently can use this model too. Hey, we're emphasizing choices, so we're practicing this thing, and that might be a good way too. If people around your kids, they might also learn a different way to handle their kids. Family members, hey, this is what we're doing. Go over that with them and help them set the limits too, so that kiddos can learn what to expect in all the environments with all their caregivers.
So some other options might sound something like, Johnny, I know you think it would be really fun to stand on the table, but the table is not for standing on. The floor is for standing on. You can choose to stand on the floor, or you can choose to stand on one foot on the floor. You can be creative and fun with your choices too.
Yeah. Target's not for screaming in. Outside's for screaming. Target's for shopping. So sometimes it's reframing it in their mind, and they're like, oh, you're right. I can scream outside, but I can't scream in Target.
So if you're setting limits, you also don't want to say like, in here, the walls are not for coloring on, because that means that it's okay to color on walls in other places, but not in here. So you just want more of a blanket statement. Like, the walls are not for coloring on, people are not for hitting, not just your little sister's not for hitting, but people are not for hitting. I am not for hitting.
And then that's the connection earlier where once, maybe this is effective for a while, or if it continues on, it's you're choosing. So now you're taking a little bit more control, like you're choosing to continue to throw the tantrum, or you're choosing to color on the walls, then you're choosing to lose your markers for the day. You're choosing to have me pick you up and take you out of Target. You're choosing these things. So it's still framing their choices, and those can get very specific, but it's continuing on with, we're still gonna, if I said you're not gonna eat cookies, you're still not gonna get cookies. If I said we're gonna leave, you gotta leave. So make sure you're okay with what you say, and continue on with that. And even if, especially small children, sometimes it is, you have to physically pick them up, put them somewhere else, but you're letting them know, like, okay, at some point, like, you don't have all day to make this decision or to continue on. You chose this, so now this is going to happen.
And sometimes you might have a kid who decides that they don't want to make a choice, and instead you can say, if you don't choose a choice, then you're choosing for me to make a choice for you. And then you can say, you've chosen for me to make a choice for you, so I choose whatever it is. And as Gary Landry says, they'll cry loudly, but you've done your part, and you're helping them learn how to take responsibility for their actions. And I know there was a question. We're gonna just, because we're kind of running out of time, if you'll save it to the end, or you can text it to Alyssa on that number and we'll hit it at the end.
Yeah, we'll kind of get going. I will say, a lot of times it's called an extinction burst. So you're like, I'm going to try this new parenting thing, and like they said it's going to work, or like my friend said, somebody said it's going to work, and you got in, you're like, I'm going to do this. Especially if it's setting limits or boundaries on something that didn't used to have limits or boundaries, you're going to see this extinction burst, this super big, like, it's the end of the world, or like more tears and crying, and that's okay. Like he said, it took 9 days for his daughters to connect the dots. So if you stay firm in what you're doing, and it can be hard, and you can give yourself a treat at the end of the day. Do you have a special treat? Do you get special time? You say, look, I was with the kids all day. Like, this is 30-minute me time, and this is how I get it. So think about, what is your adult reinforcement, positive reinforcement or treat that you get at the end of the day because you stuck with your parenting thing that you were going to do, or because you need it.
And it was hard, but you did it anyway, because you can do hard things.
So now we're going to move to family connectedness. I like to ask the question when people come in, what would you change about your family? Or maybe it's how you're doing, or there's different ways to do it, but kind of just thinking about what would you change about how you guys connect with each other. These are some things that you can do today. there's a lot of screens. We have cell phones and screens and a lot of working on screens now, and kiddos have screens. So sometimes it's, instead of winding down with a screen, especially if they've been doing school, like everything's on a screen now, trying to wind down in a different way and noticing the purpose of the screen. Is it for work and to accomplish things? We need to do that. And sometimes it's, okay, we're trying to relax. Is there another way that we can relax together? Because we were all watching that screen at the same time, but really it was an individual experience. But when we're talking collectively as a group or doing things collectively as a group, it's a collective experience. Screens away. Routines can help, especially everybody just got into school now, so creating, what does this morning routine look like? And if the morning is awful, you can change it, and you can create a routine and for something that works with your family, like getting up earlier or setting things out, or just little things that you can do to kind of make these times go a little more smoothly for everybody. Okay, chores. So sometimes it's like, and trying to frame, like, in this house, we're all contributing to each other. So sometimes it's like you're helping do this because we help each other as a family. So you're loading the dishwasher, unloading it, and they get a sense of kind of pride about the house, about the family, and how they're contributing to help their siblings, help their parents, help each other. So framing it as not as like, oh, well, you have to do this because you need to learn how to clean, and like in learning things, kind of framing it as like we are helping each other as a family.
And think about like our littlest kids who are 4, if they can operate a screen on an iPad or an iPhone, they can unload the dishwasher or turn the switch on a vacuum cleaner. It may not be done to the way that you would like it done, but the important part would be that they participate. So when my kids were little and they needed to unload the dishwasher, we moved our plates and glasses and silverware down low enough where they could reach it. And then we moved it up as they got older. But plates could be in the bottom cabinet where pots and pans usually are, or whatever. So be creative with that too. But we want everybody to be a contributing member of the family. And that's a great way for them to feel like a part of the family.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I help families create is having a family meeting. So whether it's Sunday night or sometime, maybe it's at the end of the week, and you look forward, okay, like somebody has a big test this week. So we can kind of anticipate that what the needs of that family member might be, or a big presentation at work. Like we can anticipate that, okay, they might have bigger feelings, a little more stress, they need sleep that night. So we can look and see what that family member needs. And you can also address things like, especially with teenagers or as kids get older, what's going on with the schedule. So everybody can have that expectation. And what does this person need, and any conflict. So even starting as young kids, like, does somebody have something that we need to address, that we need to talk about, hurt feelings or anything like that, and giving everybody a role. So somebody can write the agenda, somebody can keep the timer, and switch around. Somebody can lead the meeting and say when to speak, but it's kind of a time for everybody to get on the same page and address whatever it is your family needs to address, and that might look a little different.
And if you have kids who are struggling to eat certain foods, you may have them help plan the menu for the week. Maybe you do that at the family meeting, and that can be a way that they can contribute and make it fun, right? But the caveat to that is, if you're letting them pick, you have to be okay with what they choose. So if it's spaghetti tacos, well, enjoy spaghetti tacos, right? So you might need to put some parameters in place before that. Yeah, chocolate cauliflower sounds delicious.
Another thing is telling people no. So there's a lot of things, hey, y'all come over here or come do this, or everybody wants your time and your family's time, and it's okay to say, no, this is our family time, and this is where expected, and telling teenagers, kids, like, this isn't time with friends, like, this is family time, and this is what we're going to do right now.
Family time is important. So some other ways we can connect, going for daily walks. And I think probably people got really good with this stuff during when COVID first started, and maybe as we're really sick and tired of COVID, maybe we've kind of gone away from this a little bit, but these are great ways to connect. Daily walks, chores for everybody, maybe a family prayer or devotional time. reading together. So my kids will tell you still that their favorite times growing up were when, after, if everybody got in bed early, then we would sit in the hallway and read like a chapter book. And we did the Harry Potter series, for example, like they were like 4th and 6th grade, I think, and we would read a couple of chapters a night. And they like remember those times and love those times. So kind of setting traditions and different experiences that are special to your family can be a really fun thing.
These are this slide and the next one is kind of, I don't know if y'all want to take a picture. It's just some different ideas. How do we mix stuff up and hang out together as a family? There's the next one.
Just make sure you're having some fun daily with your kids, that it's not all, I'm tired and exhausted and I just want to be on my phone by myself. Make sure you're connecting in some way.
Oh, sorry.
These are on the website, like the slides are there. So if you want to download the QR code, you can go to the website and then you can pull the slides up. Sleep routines, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, regular adequate sleep leads to improved attention, behavior, learning, increased memory, emotional regulation, better quality of life, and better mental and physical health. And that not getting enough sleep can cause lots of problems, like increase in injuries, hypertension, obesity, depression, and then just feeling like you're not capable of, taking care of yourself and everything you need to for the day. So there's a list of the amount of sleep recommended. And we think about teenagers need 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And then they go to school so early, and then they have after-school activities and homework, and that's terrible because the school systems aren't kind of in touch with this.
Mm-hmm. And you might need more sleep, too, to function well. I think our society is, go, 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 and if you get up earlier and you go to bed later, that can sometimes be praised, but it can also feel really good if you consistently get the amount of sleep for your body. Whether that is 6 to 7 hours, maybe it's 8 hours, but what can you do? Because you're living this life, it's your one life, and you have all these experiences. So if you want to choose, again, you're adult, if you want to choose not to go to bed, that's your choice, but is there a way to either stop the other activities or give your time that time to sleep so that you can experience the life the way you want to experience it? Also, plug for ADHD kiddos who don't get enough sleep at night, whether they have some kind of, I would say, issues with sleeping or struggle with sleeping or something like that, but they're not getting good enough sleep. It can look like ADHD. Sometimes this can increase the emotional dysregulation, and sometimes it might look like anxiety or anything like that, but I feel yucky when I don't sleep, so I'll probably be more teary and anxious and on edge and distracted if I'm not sleeping.
Yeah. And then American Academy of Pediatrics also recommends for screen time. So kids, it should be 1 hour or less of screen time per day. So that is TV, computer, iPads, all of that. Can you imagine 1 hour or less per day? So all screens should be turned off 30 minutes before bedtime because the blue light that radiates out is a problem and messes with your melatonin production. And then there should not be screens in a child's bedroom. I know a lot of people say, my kid likes to fall asleep watching a movie, but they would get much better sleep if they don't.
Which, don't feel bad if you're like, wow, my kid has a lot more screen time, because I hear a lot of this. How do we reduce screen time? How do we do this? That is a really big struggle, especially since being home more and all that kind of stuff.
So we're going to skip ahead to self-care for parents and caregivers. Keep going. There we go. All right, so you can't give from an empty vessel, and in order to take care of your family and your kids, you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself. So self-care, when we hear that word, sometimes we think that that's really selfish, but it's not. You have to take care of yourself. Just like on the airplane, they tell you when the oxygen mask falls that you put it on yourself before you put it on others traveling with you. It's the same thing for self-care.
Mm-hmm. I like to look at it like I'm guessing you all have a cell phone, a smartphone, something like that. Does it work if you don't charge it? So self-care is recharging us. You can't be the best you or really properly function if you're not recharging yourself.
And then
What do you want to see?
self-care for parents. I think we can skip these other ones.
Okay. These are some ideas that you can see on our slides for self-care. There.
All right, so self-care for parents, being kind to your partner, your co-parent. Sometimes we get frustrated with how our co-parent is parenting and maybe we don't agree with them. Be kind, put on a united front. Even if you disagree, agree with your co-parent in front of your children, and then after they're asleep, you can argue in the bedroom with the door closed quietly so as not to disturb them.
Yeah.
Taking turns having time with kids. So, if mom's been at home with the kids all day, then maybe when dad gets home, mom gets some me time. If they're your kids, you're not babysitting, you're just taking care of your kids. So, a pet peeve of one of my best friends is that her husband says, well, I'm going to babysit while you go XYZ. And she's like, you're not babysitting, they're your children. If you're babysitting, you would get paid for it. So just taking turns having time with kids. And also you can divide and conquer that way. So maybe it's one-on-one time. If you've got 2 kids, each parent has one-on-one time with the kid. That kind of can be self-care.
Yeah. I also have like hiring out services or whatever you want. You have a limited time in the day, everybody does, and you're trying to fill this time, and we're saying, eat right and take care of your kids and also go to work and also do all of these things. And part of self-care is going, I'm not going to deep clean my house because I would rather have family time. So in that also, goes into your budget and all those kind of things. But if you are like, I'm not going to do this, I can hire this out, and that's okay to go, I would rather spend this time with my kiddos, so I'm going to get some help in these areas and try to structure things so that we have this time together, or so I have this time for myself. And it's okay to do that. Another thing with partners is, I would say, really learning about where your partner's coming from. If this is always a parenting issue, I would say it's usually deeper than, how is this affecting the kids? A lot of times it's, my dad yelled, or I always felt like this as a kid, and I don't want my kid to feel this way. A lot of times it's deeper than that. And I think we can create understanding with our partners if we learn those things, and if we can communicate and say what they are, and then it's not necessarily a fight. It's okay, how do I support you, and how do we tackle this problem with our kid now?
Okay, and I'm going to let Kirby talk about self-care for couples too.
Oh, I think that was part of it.
Okay.
Really communicating, taking time for you. And this is all about time. Time is the hottest commodity that we have. And so whatever that looks like for you, is it putting the kids to bed early and you're sitting on the back porch, or you're sitting together and taking time to understand each other, where they are, building each other up.
Date night, make sure you're having a date night at least once a month. And that can be a picnic on your bedroom floor after the kids are in bed. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant, but making sure that you have that time for connection.
Yeah. A big thing you can do is use I statements, especially when you're talking about parenting or how you feel. So I felt this way, or from my experience, it was this. That'll probably cut down on your fights.
Yeah. And then self-care for families, taking some time outside every day. Kind of some of the other things we've talked about. Get moving, have some fun, play games together. You could take popsicle sticks and write questions and put it on the dinner table, and then while you're eating meals together, somebody could ask those questions, and that's a great way to get communication going and for your family to feel cared for.
Yeah. And that's our slide for questions. We kind of rushed through the end of it, but are there any questions?
Join me in thanking Amy and Kirby for being here today. Kirby, I'm going to have you sit right next to Amy. We're going to shift into our Q&A section. If you haven't texted in your question, please do so. I have several really great ones that I would love to ask you guys. Okay, so the first question is about bonding. And I know this is very prevalent for a lot of parents that at a young age, this parent was talking about medical issues as an infant, 2-year-old tantrums, leading to a difficult time in connecting with the child. Now the child is a few years later, and curious about some tips that you might have on increasing the bond now that the tantrums and the screaming has subsided, but it was really difficult to relate to the child early on.
Okay, so some of the things you can do or things you would do with a child as a baby and not feeling silly about doing that. So Dr. Bruce Perry is one of our just wonderful mentors on trauma, and there's a book called The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, which is a great read, but there was a foster mom, and she would rock the 8-year-old little foster child that came with her to just create that bond. So rocking, playing games together, lots of physical touch. Sorry, I'm gonna rub on you and pat your hair. Spending time together, reading together, just making sure you have some cuddle time. That human touch is important, skin to skin. So, maybe rubbing forehead or like massaging hands, and just finding what your child likes. So there may be a child, and maybe physical touch, maybe they have a hard time with that because that part, if they were like at the hospital and you weren't able to be there with them, that might be kind of foreign to them, but just getting them used to that, kind of desensitizing them to the physical touch is a really good one. Do you have anything to add?
And you might have to work up to physical touch.
Yeah.
And I think just spending 5 to 10 minutes a day, depending on how old your kid is, being present with them. So letting them choose what they want to do, the activity that they're really into, whether it's Legos or any Barbies or whatever they're super into right now, and letting them lead. So this isn't a time to be like, name the animal, or can you count all these things? Like those can be effective and you want them to learn all these different things, but not having expectations for them in this time. Like this is special us time. So sometimes it can be ice cream, whatever it is that fits for you guys. But taking time to be together and put your phone on silent and really be present with them without, okay, we're going to do this and cook dinner, or this and have the other sibling present. So really just that time set out for you guys and figure out what that bonding looks like.
And playing with your kids is really important. If you don't know how to play with them, they'll teach you. You can just ask, like if you're playing dolls and they say, here, you're this one, and you can say, what should I say? And they'll tell you, and they'll also tell you if you're doing it wrong. Like, no, do it that way. No, this one needs to come here. So trust your child with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question is behavioral signs or symptoms that would cue a parent to know I need to bring my child in for an assessment, or I'll go even further, I need to make a counseling appointment. Would love to hear about some of the warning signs that parents may need to look out for that higher level of care might be needed.
So that one's kind of tricky, right? Because sometimes we're like, oh, is this normal? I don't know what normal is. What does normal look like? So I would tell you, if you feel like whatever behaviors you're seeing are inhibiting daily functioning for either the child or for you, that would be a good time to reach out. And most therapists, I think I speak for most of us, if somebody called you and said, this is going on, I don't really know if I need therapy, we have an ethical code we follow. So if we don't feel like counseling would be appropriate for that, we're going to tell you, I don't think this is something I can help with, but maybe an occupational therapy evaluation or this other thing would be a better option.
I think that the big part about is it affecting education? Is it a behavior problem at school? Is it affecting our home life? If you feel like, this isn't really kind of the question, this isn't the home life I really want for us. There are things that are hard about parenting. There are things you can get through, but if you feel like I've exhausted all my options, I did what my mom said, what my sister said, and what this parenting book said, and I just don't know what to do anymore, and things need to change, and I feel like they really need help, then that's a good indicator. So it's not really, I guess, as much about, they have to be displaying these behaviors. It's more about, do you feel like you can manage those behaviors?
Okay, great. I know this question is likely going to pertain to most people in the room. Show of hands, multiple kids. It's almost everybody in the room, I can tell. So this is a family with 2 kids. If you have one child, the older one, who is screaming, hitting the younger child, taking the anger and the emotions out on the younger one, and the younger one needs comforting, but the older one obviously needs mom's attention, dad's attention. How do you navigate that? Do you let the older child finish the tantrum in their room and comfort them afterwards? As a parent, how do you navigate a situation like that?
So if it were me and my child, and again, this is based after years of training and experience, I would remove the younger child and go and take care of that child and spend the time with them. And then once the older child is calmed down, then I would spend the time with that child.
Mm-hmm. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is safety. So it's comforting the younger child, but you also have to make sure that the older child isn't going to be so heightened that they're unsafe or creating things. You can pick stuff off the floor if they're throwing all their toys, but it's not destroying your house or hurting somebody else. That can be picked up. But if they're really getting so heightened where they're hurt, then I would say you need to stop the older child from being so heightened. But if it's really they're upset, then because again, they need to calm down, and then it's comforting the younger child, and then I would go to the older child and walk through what could we do differently, or if you can be a way to help verbally direct the older child, but physically comfort the younger child too.
All right, the next question is kind of a mixture between choices and sleep routine. So if you have a situation with a young child who's misbehaving leading up to bedtime, you use what we learned today about choices, but for example, you say you can be nice and respectful, or you can choose to lose TV tomorrow. If you have a punishment or a choice consequence that is for another day that's too far off for the child to really connect with, how do you navigate that?
Oh, that's a great question. So that is hard to navigate, and when they are little bitty, it's not going to matter what you say today, they lose tomorrow, because that's not going to stick, kind of out of sight, out of mind. And we want to start with a fresh slate each day also, right? Because we want to make sure there's no shaming with that. So it may look more like readjusting bedtime routine and maybe starting a little bit earlier, giving choices for, do you choose to use this stuffed animal to sleep with, or do you choose a different stuffed animal? Do you choose for mommy to sit in bed with you? Do you choose for daddy to lie down and rub your back? Giving some choices like that instead. And I don't know if that really answers your question. If you have something more specific, you can see us afterwards. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything you want to add?
Just, are you choosing to get in bed? It sounds like at that point, meltdowns happening because they're tired. So are you choosing to get in bed, or are you choosing me to put you in bed? And it's, this is where you need to go to bed is kind of the bottom line. So go.
Great. We have a question about medication. How do you feel about medication for ADHD? What age do you feel like there can be an accurate diagnosis with ADHD?
So we're not medical doctors, so let us start by saying that. And I think that a lot of parents struggle with, do we medicate our child or not? And really, it is your ultimate decision. Nobody else can make that decision for you. If you're working with a therapist, You might say, hey, I'm looking at possibly medicating my child. Do you have any tips or other things we could try first? I know for a lot of parents, they don't want to medicate until they've exhausted every option, and that makes sense. I would say, if we're looking at specifically an ADHD diagnosis, there are so many other things that can resemble ADHD that I would definitely try other things first, but that doesn't mean that people don't need medication. There are kids that do need medication. But early childhood trauma, which can be stress on mom during pregnancy, it can be an actual event that happened. The child's going to have a heightened sense of just their being. So a lot of times that might look like ADHD. There might be hypervigilance, or they might be impulsive. And so you would just want to rule out all of that and really talk to someone who can get with you on the background of the child and rule those things out before you decide, okay, let's get an ADHD diagnosis and let's get medication. Do you remember the age that, I feel like it's around age 7 that you probably wouldn't want a diagnosis before that. But I could be,
Yeah, but I've
don't put me
definitely,
on that.
yeah, I've worked with kids who have a diagnosis before that. I would say 7 to 8 is when I see a lot of the ADHD being diagnosed, or people kind of questioning and looking for an assessment or testing or something like that. School gets a little bit harder, and it's a little more academic focused than play focused. So that's, I think, kind of why. And you're also having to regulate yourself a little more. So research says medication and therapy is the best way to treat ADHD, and you can have feelings about both of those things.
Great. We're going to do just a few more questions. Today we talked a lot about very big feelings and tantrums that happen, but this question is, what about those big feelings that are more invisible? As a parent, how do you navigate when you know that there's emotions going on, but they're not being expressed in a big way?
What comes to my mind is starting that verbal conversation. So, I'm wondering is a lot less direct than you are feeling. So I'm wondering if you might be feeling a little bit like this, a little bit sad or down. Maybe that will tease something out, and maybe you're doing something together, sandbox outside, or touching something, or cooking or something, where especially if your child doesn't want to be confronted head on, it's a little bit kind of around the side. Maybe it's coloring. Maybe it's drawing. And this is kind of what we do in the playroom, but maybe it's drawing. How do you feel on the inside? And just asking them about their drawing. So maybe trying to get that expression a different way than verbally having a conversation. And maybe they don't know how they feel, so they need help teasing it out. So sometimes it's creating that language for them too.
Car rides are also a wonderful way for mouths to start moving. If you're just driving around, it's especially helpful if the kid is a little bit older, maybe a front seat rider, where we had a rule in our car of if you were in the front seat, no phone or no screens, so that we could just talk and visit. And there are lots of great conversations. And maybe you take the long way to the grocery store or the long way to school or home from school to make sure that there's more time to intentionally talk about those things.
Mm-hmm. Younger kids' books, anything that might kind of give them some language about it too.
And then also talking about things maybe where they're talking more in metaphor. So maybe you're playing with toys with them and you're saying, this one, especially if you have a clue of how your child's feeling. So maybe you're playing with this doll and you say, this one had a really hard time at school today because her friends were really mean to her. I wonder what we could say to her to make her feel better. So anytime you can use a toy or another object kind of as metaphor for the child, then that takes the pressure off and they don't feel like you're directly confronting them.
Beautiful. This will be our last question of the day, but I know that Amy and Kirby will be sticking around if you have any other questions. But this is a good one for us to end with. How do you reinforce the positive memories? We talked a lot about brain development and a little bit about trauma, but I would love for us to talk about how do you reinforce the good stuff for the kids?
I would almost say highlighting, if you're all out together, I don't know why, picture just being outside and the day is good and we're all together and you feel happy, you can tell them how you feel and really bringing attention to like, my heart feels so happy right now. And, you know, this makes me happy, or remember when we did this together and we all laughed so hard. So really highlighting all of these positive things that you experienced together and what your body felt like and what your thoughts were and what you guys saw and heard and ate and all those kind of things. To have their brains pull up those images and pull up those feelings and pull up those smells in their mind. And then again, that's connecting those neurons and it's strengthening them.
So rewiring, neurons that fire together, wire together. And also remember how if you focus on the positive, you're going to think about the positive things. So maybe at dinner or at the end of the day saying, what was your favorite part about today? What are you most grateful for? What's the biggest blessing that you can think of? And then also sharing one of your good memories from the day. And I think that that can help accentuate the positive. Mm-hmm. And then imagine if you drifted off to sleep with like all these positive thoughts in your head. What would that do for you? You'd probably wake up in a great mood the next morning. So that's something we can do as adults too.
Yeah, and I love that throughout the whole presentation today, you both talked about being creative. And so with this question, don't be afraid to be creative and use that creative side of your brain to bring in all of the senses. If you're having a really special picnic in that moment, what do you smell right now? Let's look at the clouds and what shapes they're there. That can really help to reinforce positive memories for kids and for adults. So with that, I hope that you all enjoyed today. I'm so grateful to both of you ladies for coming and sharing your knowledge. Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for prioritizing your mental health and the mental health of your kiddos. I think it's so important, and I'm so grateful that we have a big group here that can model that out into the world. I do want to leave you guys with a hope that, you know, here at Covenant, we really encourage that you be a part of a healthy community. And so if you don't have a church home, you know, we're talking about mental health, emotional health, physical health, but spiritual health is a part of that too. And so I encourage you to find a church home. If you don't have one, I want to invite you to come here on any Sunday. We have English services at 9 and 10:30. And a Spanish service at 12:30 each Sunday. And so find a community to connect with so that way you can grow your families in a healthy way and rely on other people and help have that support. I think with that, I'll end with just a closing prayer of the day. Don't forget to take a picture of that QR code out there for the handouts and the slides as well, or is that on your website?
The slides are on there too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you can have all the information from today and stick around and ask your questions. We also have a really great Bible study that's coming up here at Covenant called Foundations, that we're going to be digging into Scripture about what does Scripture say about depression and anxiety. So I want to invite you to that as well. That starts this Wednesday. But let me offer up a word of prayer as we close up today. Lord, we just thank you so much for the opportunity to come here and talk about tough moments, to talk about tantrums, to talk about the brain. I thank you for all of the parents, all of the caregivers, all the family members and friends who have come today to prioritize their families, to prioritize the little ones, and also to model healthy wellness. I pray, God, that the knowledge that we gained today would not stop as we leave these doors, but Lord, it would spark something amazing in families, and that you would help us to be a light into the world. Lord, we thank you for who you are. We give you all the praise and all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right, take care. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for coming.